Hey everyone, it's Valerie, the six-figure RHIT, and I'm back again today to give you some information on how I aced the RHIT exam on my first try. This video is good for anyone who is limited on money as far as the amount of money you have and the amount of materials that you can purchase, because the exams study guide and the practice exams can add up. It can start to cost you a pretty penny, and then especially if you want to get all of these books to study for the exam, it can start to add up. And one thing I want to point out about the practice exams is that it's a one-time deal. Once you pay for the practice exam and you take it, that's it. It's not something that you can do over and over again multiple times. You would have to pay for a practice exam each time you want to take it. I didn't have that luxury of paying for practice exams over and over again. So I created a practice exam myself based off of the questions that was in the study guide. Trust me when I tell you that a lot of these questions that's in the study guide is very, very similar to the questions you're going to see when you go in and you sit for the exam. The questions are not the same exact questions, but they're very, very similar. You have to have the knowledge and the critical thinking skills and know the process, understand the process to get to the answer. If you have those things, you're not going to have a problem when you go in and you sit for this RHIT exam, if you understand the process of how to get to the answers. So first things first, you have to be determined and you have to be motivated. If you're not determined and you're not motivated to get this RHIT certification, you're going to slack off on it. That's just the fact of the matter. So a little bit about my timeline. So I finished school graduated September 2013, and I sat for the RHIT exam. It was March 2014 when I got the certification. And so when I finished school, there was a 2-month class that they had for like a RHIT prep. It was free, completely optional. You didn't really have to take it, but I did take advantage of that opportunity, and I kind of, slacked on it, kind of paid attention to it, kind of didn't. But I did take advantage of that opportunity that I had to take an RHIT exam prep class, right? So this is to explain why I had that gap period in between when I finished school and when I sat for the RHIT exam. So that's September when I graduated, and then you have October, November for the class, and then after that it was December. It was the holidays, New Year's Eve is coming around and everything like that. I already knew in my mind that I was not going to be focused on studying for the RHIT exam. So I didn't study during that time period for the exam. I didn't do anything around that time period because I was focused on the holidays, right? But there was a goal that I had set in mind. There was one thing that I knew for a fact, was that when I did sit down for the certification, that I wanted to pass it my first go round. I didn't want to fail. I didn't want to have to take it again. I didn't want to have to study again. After, I've been studying all this time, I knew for a fact that I wanted to take the exam and pass the very first time that I took it. And I made that a New Year's goal for the New Year's, right? So I already knew in my mind that I want to take this exam. I want to pass it the first go round, and I'm not going to do it until the new year, right? So I'd say it was about maybe sometime in the middle of January that I began to really study for the exam. Once you figure out what it is that you want to do, create a timeline for yourself of when you're going to do it, right? Set out a timeline for yourself and act on it, right? So I gave myself a month. I said, I'm going to study for a month, and I'm going to cut everything off during this time period. I spoke to my husband and I told him, I said, hey, I'm studying for this RHIT examination, and I'm going to need at least 2 or 3 hours out of the week every single day to study uninterrupted time. So I'm going to need your help with this because I'm zoning in. I wasn't going out. I wasn't speaking to any of my friends or anything like that because it all was a distraction. So know yourself. Know what distractions you have and what your weaknesses are. If somebody's calling you up and say, hey, let's go out this weekend and do X, Y, Z, da, da, da. Like, if you know that that's going to throw you off track, then set that off to the side temporarily. It's a short-term sacrifice for something that's going to give you long-term benefits, right? So during that time period, I cut everything off. Like I was like non-existent, okay, to the world. And I said that I'm going to study all this month. I'm going to dedicate at least 2 to 3 hours every single day to studying and practicing for this RHIT exam. Now, the source that I use for studying is what AHIMA recommends. The RHIT exam preparation guide, that is what I use. When you go into the AHIMA website and you click on the RHIT certification and you look for recommended resources, there's this graph that will pop up and it'll let you know what the recommended sources are and what each source has as far as the compliance, leadership, data, content, coding, all of that stuff. And I looked for the source that had everything. I didn't want to use multiple books to study. And if you recognize, a lot of these books that's on the recommended resources are the books that you utilize in your courses for your associate's degree program or whatever it is that you're going to school for. A lot of these books are the same exact books that you're utilizing in your courses, but not the RHIT exam preparation guide, right? So I looked for the guide that had everything packed into it, and that is what I used to study for the exam. And I was working, on a budget. They have all these other options out there where you can also get like practice exams, and those could range anywhere between $40 to $80. I'm just rounding this off my head. And the practice exam is a one-time use only, so it's not like you can purchase it and then you can keep practicing over and over again. It's only one time. So I said, well, you know what? I'm going to create my own practice exam. So I just pretty much took the questions that was in the exam prep guide, and there's like questions at the back of each chapter, each section. I would take some of the questions and I created my own exam pretty much. Now, what I will tell you is that a lot of what you see in this RHIT exam prep guide is what you're going to see on the actual exam. Not word for word, not the same exact questions, but you are going to see some questions that are very, very similar to what you saw in this guide. And so it's pretty much using applied knowledge. You have to know the process of answering these questions. So it's going to take a lot of critical thinking skills and applied knowledge. Now, no one ever told me that before I took the exam. It wasn't until I was actually in the exam that I realized that some of these questions look very, very familiar. Like I saw these in the guide already. And because I knew the process of getting to the answer, it was very easy for me to answer the questions during the exam. And that's very, very important, because when you go in and take this exam, it's just you, that computer, your coding book, and that's it. You have to know this stuff. You have to know the process of getting to the answer. If you understand and know the process, then it'll be easy for you to answer these questions during the exam. Don't let the exam scare you, the thought of taking the exam scare you, because if you know your stuff, you know your stuff. And when you go in and you take the exam, you'll be able to answer these questions on the exam. So this is what I did. Like I said, I didn't have the money to buy multiple practice exams or whatnot. So I created practice exams for myself. And what I did the first time around is I took questions from each of the sections and I tested my own self to see in which areas was I strong and which areas was where I was weak at. That is where I would recommend for you to focus the majority of your time when it comes to studying, is the areas where you're weak. Because if you don't know how to answer the questions in, let's say, the coding section, or let's say the leadership section of the RHIT exam, that's going to be the part that's going to mess you up, and you'll fail the whole entire exam because you did really, really bad in 1 or 2 sections of the exam, but everywhere else you did really, really good. So every single section of the exam really, really matters. So I'd say get the recommended resource, the RHIT study resource guide, okay? Create an practice exam for yourself. If you don't have the money to purchase multiple practice exams, create a practice exam for yourself. I'd have my daughter test me on it. I'd have my husband test me on it too. Don't cheat yourself. Don't do something like take a practice exam and be cheating and really, looking for the answers or having the answers right next to you. Because if you do that, then you're really not going to be able to identify the areas that you need to focus your attention in. So get the recommended resource. When you get it, create a practice exam for yourself and just wing it. Just wing it. Just take the practice exam and see what your test results are like, and identify the areas that you're really, really weak in. And then those would be the areas that when you're studying, you want to focus in really on those areas and study hard. And then periodically, I would test myself over again every week. And as I improved and improved and improved, then I felt comfortable with actually scheduling my test. So don't make the mistake of scheduling your exam before you're ready. Some people do that, and then you find yourself rushing with the timeline to try to get yourself together for the exam, and you're rushing yourself. You don't want to do that. There's no rush. Take your time, study for the exam, identify the areas where you are weak, study hard in those areas, and then go back and do the practice exam until your averages are looking good in all of the areas of the exam. Okay, and so after you've identified your weak areas, studied hard for the exam, took your practice exams again over and over again to the point that you actually feel comfortable and confident that you can go in and that you will know the material and that you're going to ace the test, then I'd say go ahead and schedule your exam after that. So as I said before, stay tuned. There's a lot more information that I have to share in reference to how I prepared for the exam. How did I study? How did I schedule out my day? Things of that nature. Coding tips, billing tips, data analytic tips, a lot of stuff that I'm going to be airing out on this page. So stay tuned. If you haven't already followed or subscribed to my channel, make sure that you do so that you don't miss a beat. If you have any questions for me or anything like that, go ahead and ask me the question. Don't be shy. You can drop it in the comments or you can send it to my inbox. Have a good day.